Returning to Geopolitics and Empire is author and Professor Edward Curtin of edwardcurtin.com. Check out his blog and his books as well. Welcome back to G&E, Ed.
Thank you, Hervoya. I'm glad to be with you.
Yeah, it's good to...
Always interesting.
Yeah, it's always interesting. It's always good to chat. I know you're now a semi-regular on DNT Radio, my other outlet, and I wanted to get an update from you, see how you see things in the world, and maybe we could start with World War III, Ukraine. The situation there seems to be continuing to deteriorate. Things are getting bogged down, entrenched. Everyone seems to be doubling down. The West continues pouring money it doesn't have into Kiev and Zelensky. Western economies are collapsing as a result slowly. Even Western governments, look at London today. Liz Truss is gone. I think she broke the record for the shortest serving PM. Nigel Farage says they're going to put in a globalist in place. And, Russia's drawing the glowing red line. I say glowing, because the nukes seem to be ready. We're down to the wire. You say we're staring into the abyss. It's as if we're waiting for someone somewhere to be the first to initiate, the chain of events, to jump into that abyss so the rest of the world follows. How do you see things, Ed?
Well, I obviously do think that we are at a critical moment, and it's not looking good with the people who are directing traffic for the United States, Mr. Biden and his team of really international incompetents, who are pushing the envelope and pushing Russia endlessly. And now with these NATO war games going on, which are aimed at the objective of these war games is to see how we can destroy, not you and I, NATO, US, can destroy Russia with nuclear weapons. And it's very, very provocative. And Russia now has initiated their own war games in reaction to the United States and NATO. And we're moving in an ominous direction. It's similar to what happened, but we don't have the leadership in the world in the Cuban Missile Crisis. We don't have a Khrushchev, who was quite extraordinary in '62, and Kennedy, and both of them were able to use reason to solve the problem. But the people in charge now, for the United States, and Zelensky, of course, is just a puppet for the U.S. and NATO. They are totally unreasonable and really quite disturbed in my estimation. And they're going to pay for it. And I hope the whole world doesn't pay for it.
Yeah, and just to draw from your history and experience, I used to teach history, and when I read and taught history, I really put my shoes into the past. I taught about the assassination of Kennedy, Hammarskjöld, Cuban Missile Crisis, all of that, which you just touched on. When I read history and teach it, I really feel like I'm back there in 1962, and just thinking about what's going on today. I personally feel that this is a more dangerous moment than anything we've experienced in the Cold War. Or would you feel the same?
I don't know if it's more dangerous, but the weapons have more power today, and I'd say it's as dangerous. Perhaps the most dangerous thing is the insouciance, the blasé attitude of most people to what is going on. I was asked by someone else, do you remember the Cuban Missile Crisis? And of course I do. And everyone was on the edge of their seats back then. This was a very, very scary, dramatic moment. and the population at large knew it was. I think the whole world knew it was, and everyone was deeply concerned. Today, people, they don't even discuss it. It's not even a topic of conversation. Maybe the price of groceries and the price of home heating fuel and that kind of thing is up for discussion, but not this. It seems that there is great repression of this. I guess you could say, almost in the Freudian sense, this is the untouchable. This is something you can't talk about. And so it's probably more dangerous, as you say.
A message from our sponsors. It seems we may be headed for the 1930s all over again. Financial collapse, tyranny, and world war. I've already secured multiple passports, offshore accounts, safe havens, and escaped to the sunnier shores of Mexico. My friend Mikkel Thorup of the Expat Money Show is hosting the Expat Money Summit with 30-plus experts that'll help you reclaim freedom in this fourth turning by moving your life and wealth offshore. Protect yourself and secure a new life abroad. Register now for free at expatmoneysummit.com or don't and enjoy surviving on insect protein while stuck in the metaverse. Since 2020, Ron Unz of Unz.com has argued the COVID outbreak was due to a U.S. biowarfare attack against China and Iran. Jeffrey Sachs, the Russian Ministry of Defense, and others are now making similar suggestions. Weeks before COVID appeared in Wuhan, a top U.S. biowarfare official ran the Crimson Contagion exercise on how to protect America against infection if a dangerous virus suddenly appeared in China. After COVID appeared in Wuhan, it jumped to Iran, infecting Iranian leadership only weeks after America had assassinated Iran's military commander. Iran publicly accused America of an illegal biowarfare attack and filed a complaint with the UN. Ron Unz has produced a free ebook and is available for interviews to further discuss this issue. And don't forget to fund Geopolitics and Empire. You can leave a donation, except on Patreon or PayPal, which have banned us, book a consultation, or become a member. It reminds me of a quote that I recently read from Isaac Asimov, who says, "What is really amazing and frustrating is mankind's habit of refusing to see the obvious and inevitable until it is there, and then muttering about unforeseen circumstances." And you wrote a piece called "Only Adult Children Still Believe U.S. Propaganda," and I totally agree with you. I mean, I cannot believe today. I think it's this technological, very consumer society that's just people just care about trivial things. I can't believe how people just are in la la land. I've never seen this before. I mean, how do any further thoughts on just how people just don't care about higher intellectual things and just seem to be stuck on these, trivial carnal matters?
Yeah. Well, I feel like a broken record because I've been talking and writing about this stuff. I mean, not the war in Ukraine and the possibility of nuclear war, but all the other things you've mentioned, which have led up to this. And I feel like a broken record, and I feel like this. I've been saying this for decade upon decade upon decade, and you're absolutely right. People are focused on trivial pursuits. There used to be a game, a card game, Trivial Pursuits, and there'd be a stack of cards, and you'd turn one over, and it would say, "Who is the star of Casablanca?" And you had to say Humphrey Bogart or this kind of thing. And that's what it's like now. It's trivia. And I use a phrase. I think people are tranquilized with trivia. It's as if they've gotten a shot. Or maybe a lot of people have gotten the COVID shots, but as if they really have been tranquilized, like an animal that needs to be tranquilized. And it's old stuff, but the propaganda is so vast, it's so vast and deep, and people still buy it. I don't think people are stupid. I think they just want to believe, and they're living in some kind of bad faith. Bad faith.
Yeah.
The German theologian Dietrich Bonhoeffer, who was killed by Hitler's regime, called it cheap grace. People want this cheap grace, but they don't want to look into the darkness, into the truth of what's happening. They want to turn away, but still want grace.
Yeah, I think I like how you put it. Like some of us really don't have a problem looking into this the abyss or darkness, and I think we need to. And yeah, cheap grace. And that reminds me of a quote from a recent guest of mine, Justin Hart, who says it's a curious thing because a generation ago in the late '60s, you stuck it to the man. You know, if they came in and told you were going to do something at university, you told them to shove off. But now the tables have turned, and for this young generation, they fear risk of cancellation is far greater than just complying with whatever it is, the medical tyranny, the Ukraine flags or whatnot. Going back to Ukraine, we're starting to see a trend now, like these terror attacks. You can see the Nord Stream pipeline attack. There was an attempt on the Turk Stream attack. They assassinated Daria Dugina, the daughter of Russian intellectual Alexander Dugin. I had on a U.S. Marine Corps veteran, Lucas Gage, who he did an interesting thought exercise. He said it would be as if the Russians assassinate Jordan Peterson's daughter, Mikhaila Peterson, because he's our Western intellectual. And then we've seen the Kerch Bridge, the Crimean Bridge, and now there's talk of Russian television's talking about a U.S. NATO nuclear false flag. And so what do you make of this series of events and where we might be headed?
Well, I think obviously all of them, despite the fact that Zelensky, in his ridiculous, absurd statements, said today, I don't know if he said it before, that Ukraine wasn't involved in the Kerch Bridge explosion. These are all forms of terrorism against infrastructure and against civilians. The assassination, the pipelines, the bridge, and so forth. And so we've entered into an even more serious period where this stuff is going to continue. A false flag, I wouldn't be surprised at all. The Biden administration is facing these elections in a few weeks, but less than 2 weeks now, and they will probably lose dramatically unless something dramatic happens between now and then. So I don't know. There's no way of predicting. It wouldn't surprise me. It wouldn't surprise me if we woke up one day or were going to sleep at night and all of a sudden there it was, flashing news, some terrible thing in Ukraine or in Russia, somewhere.
Yeah, I'm not shocked anymore. Tomorrow, just as you said, we might wake up with this earth-shattering news, and also what you make of just in general Putin and Russia. They declared martial law in the 4 regions, and to be fair, I was reading Russians are attacking also Ukrainian civilian infrastructure, taking out some of I think they were using drones, taking out electricity infrastructure in Ukraine. How do you sort of grade Putin and Russia and what they're doing? Some say that they are sort of defending themselves and parts of the world from this, Western Davos globalism. What are your thoughts there?
Well, I think for sure that Putin and Russia He's the leader of the country, but it's an entire country that we can't just say it's one man. But I think he's doing what any sane leader would do, and he is defending his country that is surrounded by NATO forces, weapons that can be converted into nuclear weapons in a short period of time. He's dealing with a government, the U.S. government, that has reneged on all promises and that has pushed up to the border. And for years, after the coup in Ukraine, U.S. coup in Ukraine, 2014, they have been, the Ukrainians, with the assistance of the United States, have been shelling and killing people in eastern Ukraine, large numbers, 14, 15, 16,000 before this war even began. And they were ready to invade those areas in the Donbass areas in February of this year. And Putin said, no, I mean, we have to defend these people. They're Russian-speaking people who are not allowed even to use their own language. They're historically connected to Russia. And I think what he's doing now is really just preliminary to what he's going to do, and the Russia is going to do in the weeks and the months to come. I think there's going to be a major offensive taking place.
Yeah, and today, I mean, what do you make of the president of Lithuania? And I think Dutch politicians are now calling for the creation of a special tribunal in The Hague to try the Russians, I suppose, and Putin as war criminals.
Well, that whole tribunal stuff is just a joke. It's been a joke for a long time. They try whomever the West considers, a war criminal. Never anyone in the West. I mean, was George Bush tried at the Hague was for killing so many Iraqis and others? Was Barack Obama tried at the Hague for the Syrian war, for the destruction of Libya? Who's the terrorist? I mean, who should be tried? Who's the war criminal? There are many war criminals, throughout history, but at the leader of the pack is the United States. As I wrote in a recent article, the United States fights wars all around the world, far from its shores, 5, 10, 15,000 miles away, and has been doing this for a long time. What other country does this? There is no other country that does this. They might fight regional wars near their borders, but they're not going 10,000 miles away to Vietnam, to Libya, to Ukraine. The list is endless. They don't have 900 military bases around the world in all these countries. They don't have special forces throughout Africa and South America. They don't assassinate foreign leaders like we do. They don't assassinate their own leaders. Like this government assassinated so many of the Kennedys. And I always, try to remember to say Kennedys with an S at the end. It's not just one. They don't assassinate UN leaders like Dag Hammarskjöld, which the CIA did in conjunction with the South Africans and perhaps the British Special Forces. And it's obvious if you study history. You taught it. I've taught propaganda, and which of course is tied in intimately to history and sociological historical analysis. And if you look at it, it's quite obvious that the United States is the leading rogue nation in the world.
Yeah,
and I'm an American. I'm not proud of this. I despise it. I hate it. I wish it were different. I wish I lived in a country where the rulers were sane people, but they're not.
Yeah, I mean, I'm an American as well, and I would agree with you. I mean, I have guests that I respect as well, but I disagree when, they view us as Americans and then our country, and we have to defend ourselves. And they defend our whether we're at war with Russia or China, and saying we have to defend ourselves when, as you say, we're provoking, we're aggressing. We don't leave well enough alone. We're all over the place. Over the weekend, in Haiti for the umpteenth time, U.S. and Canadian forces. I spoke to Montreal activist Yves Engler about it recently, and the Haitians despise the United Nations. The Haitians just want to be left alone from Washington and Ottawa, and so they were waving around Russian flags in Haiti. But any thoughts on China? We had, I think, the 20th CCP Congress. I haven't seen confirmation that Xi Jinping has yet to be confirmed for the third time. But just any thoughts on China, and the multipolar world? Do you see a new world coming into being, or do you still think America is going strong?
Well, I used to, and not that long ago, maybe a year ago, I used to think that the talk about a multipolar world coming into existence was not true, that the United States and its allies around the world were still in control. But I no longer think that way. I do think a multipolar world is coming into view. It's slow. It's like a slow birth. I'm thinking of a poem, but I better not go there because I can't think of the lines of it right now. It's William Yeats, the Irish poet. A slow coming we had of it, and blah, 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 for this birth. I think it's Yeats. It may be T.S. Eliot. I'm mixing up my poets. But yes, I do think so. And again, the history of U.S.-China relationships is one of the U.S. and European countries, Great Britain, trying to totally dominate China, going back to the 1800s, to the Opium Wars. The U.S. institutional structure, especially the educational at the elite universities, is built on the blood money of the opium trade. We're talking now about Harvard and universities like that, and the slave trade. So from two different directions, from Africa and from China. And the United States has always despised and tried to run China. And finally, China is saying, no, we're not going to take that anymore. And it seems like, but the United States is still pushing the agenda there over Taiwan, especially, but in the South China Sea. I remember a few years ago, John Pilger came out with a very, very good movie about the coming war with China, and an excellent documentary. And it's coming to pass. So we have two fronts open, one in the Pacific and one in Ukraine and Eastern Europe, surrounding Russia. But the United States and their allies are not going to win this war. It's a delusion. Many people say, when I say there's a good chance of nuclear war, this is very, very dangerous. They say, well, the elites are not that crazy, because if there's a nuclear war, they'll get destroyed as well. And my reply is always the same. Why do you think that there aren't insane people leading countries? That they're self-destructive, they're nihilists. Some say nihilist, I say nihilist. And they're suicidal in many, many ways. There is this underpinning of nihilism in the West that is so strong, and insanity as well.
Yeah, I hold exactly that view. I mean, the average person thinks that these elites think like we do. They don't. Put yourself in their shoes. They're psychopaths. I don't think they would think anything. I mean, look what they've already done. They pressed a few buttons, said Saddam has WMDs and killed 2 million Iraqis. There was a study done a few years ago saying that the consequence was 1 to 2 million dead civilians, as a result of the consequences of the war, not just the war itself. And these people are crazy. And I think, other tangent, like some of these elites, they probably have safe havens, bunkers and stuff where they probably will be fine in case of a nuclear war. So they're crazy at the same time. But also, I think they would probably be fine, and then they would just come back in the aftermath and continue ruling. And we touched on this last time. We had a great interview last time that got a lot of play. Just to get your further, thoughts, updates on this medical tyranny, the COVID stuff. A lot of things seem to have died down here in Mexico. Even the airlines no longer require masks. Everything just, and I was traveling recently, and it felt like the before COVID times, 2019. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
But I'm just not holding out hope. I just feel like something's going to give again. And, related to the medical tyranny is this digitalization, which we talked about as well last time. And I can really see it in the background moving forward, that digitalization of everything. You're seeing banks go online, slowly getting rid of cash, forcing you to use apps for everything now, people being, blacklisted. And so do you have any latest thoughts on, the aftermath of COVID, or this, transhumanist technological dystopia?
Yeah, absolutely. I've Peter Koenig, who writes for Global Research, who is a brilliant man based in Europe, in Switzerland, who worked for the World Bank. He's a water specialist. He just wrote a very good article on this digitalization of everything. And I've written about it many, many, many times. I was saying to my wife earlier today, I have written endlessly about the cell phone, the digital revolution, the whole program to digitalize our lives completely. It's why I don't have a cell phone, which is, a little thing perhaps to some, but I think it is absolutely essential, because I think the cell phone is the key presently to the way they're trapping people into this system of the future. Obviously, we're on the computers here, and that's another element of it. But the cell phone, I can't carry a computer around, but the cell phone that people have, it's tracking them. It does all of their banking now, and more and more every day. And this, of course, is tied into to COVID, which is a vast propaganda program that's been going on for years, and people still don't get it. I have a friend who just wrote a wonderful article. His name is Jim Kavanaugh. He has a website, The Polemicist, and he wrote this article with videos in it about Anthony Fauci and how he contradicts, how he lies all the time. Of course, he's leaving, but he's replaceable by some other functionary. But I don't think the COVID stuff is going away. It's just sleeping right now. But they'll bring that back at some point. I don't know when. Maybe December, January, February. But I don't think they're going to let up with that.
Yeah, I'd agree. I mean, just a few days ago, I was looking at buying a car, and we went to some lots. Everything's like, just go look at the car. And we went to one place, and you were forced. They had a big QR code, and like, oh, you need to scan with your smartphone surveillance device the QR code to get your turn to go look at the lot. And I'm standing there dumbfounded. I'm like, I'm not scanning. I mean, I might think I've got an old phone. I don't even, they can barely do anything. And it's like, I'm not doing that. And then they finally relented, and they were like, okay, we'll give you like a manual. We'll let you go or something. And it's like, this is the future. Like soon, you literally won't be able to do anything without a smartphone. Bank, buy a car, enter into any facility without that smartphone QR code. You're going to become a non-entity. Like you literally won't be able to function. It's insane. It's sad. We're rolling right into this. Just thoughts on the economy. The economy really seems to be taking a hit all over the world. I'm reading in Germany, they've got the worst inflation in 70 years. Just general inflation seems to be like 10, 20% all over the place. And it doesn't look good. Any thoughts on the economy?
Well, it's bad. It's really bad, and it's going to get worse. I know just from our perspective here, we recently had to get heating oil because it's getting colder, and the tank was empty, and it was twice the price of last year. It doubled, and it's far worse in Europe. And in England, Wales, Scotland, in Ireland too, and it's a planned economic breakdown for sure. Just like with COVID, when everything was shut down, who was hurt by that? More and more billionaires became bigger billionaires, and perhaps trillionaires, and regular people and small businesses were destroyed. But the corporations, of course, came out of it. And why? That's an accident? No, that's not an accident. These people are really destructive, and they're bringing the world to its knees. And when people worry about, how to feed themselves and how to heat their houses, they're not going to be thinking really about Ukraine or nuclear weapons. They have more immediate concerns. And this is one of those tricks as well. It's understandable that people, there's a soup kitchen just down the hill from where we live. And every day the people are lined up. It's not a soup kitchen. It's where you can get groceries for free. No questions asked. And, it's a very important thing, but there's so many people, it's overwhelming. And this area where I live is not an inner city, very poor area at all. But there's a lot of poor people, and people are struggling. Yeah, so I think the economy is going to get worse. The Europeans are a bunch of idiots. If they're allowing themselves to be pulled along like poodles on a leash by the United States and to destroy their economies, it's bad. The world's messed up.
Yeah, I was reading New York City. They were having some of the homeless shelters were at a record. And speaking of billionaires, I saw a clip on CNBC today from where they were interviewing Bill Gates. I didn't know Bill Gates was an expert in absolutely everything: IT, tech, vaccines, medical health stuff, energy. Now they were asking him about it, and he basically said BlackRock and Larry think are great leaders, and the Ukraine war and energy crisis are great for the long run. That's literally basically what he said. And so, yeah, we are in for interesting times. And any final thoughts for us? What do we do? I just feel like we just keep speaking the truth until we can speak no more. Resist where we can locally, wherever we are. Fight back, but also prepare for tough times, and just come what may.
That's about all we can do, and we can hope. I'm not really much of an organizer. I'm not an organizer. I'm more of I've been involved in demonstrations and anti-war stuff and been arrested over the years. But we need to keep speaking out, writing, trying to wake people up, and hope that will happen. And we have to also, at the same time, encourage people to love life and to try to find something every day that is beautiful and wonderful and can shine a light into their lives, whether it's a walk in a park or in the woods, or listening to music, or playing with children, or sharing a meal, poetry. That's really very, very important, because what's the point of being alive if all we do is stare into the darkness? It shouldn't be one or the other. It should be both. It needs to be both. I'm just reread a book by Nikos Kazantzakis, Zorba the Greek, and there are many lessons in that book from Mr. Zorba about how to approach life. And I think that's what we need to do, and I'm sure that's what you're going to keep doing, and that's what I'm going to keep doing. But both at the same time.
I think you summarized it well, better than I could. I that's my same approach. People just sort of poo-poo me for thinking like I'm just staring at the abyss, I'm depressed and black-pilled. No, it's like you have to understand reality. I don't want to live in some fake la la land. I want to live grounded in the real world, assessing the threat accurately, without emotion, cold calculation. This is what we're facing. And as well, enjoy life, as you said. And I've been doing that, enjoying nature, the trees, dogs and cats that pass by, kids, a nice meal, walks, as you say, relationships, friends, family, neighbors, and so on. And so, yeah, as you say, it's both. It's not one or the other. And that's sort of how I stay chipper and upbeat in the face of all of these things we've been discussing. Again, the website is edwardcurtin.com. You're on Twitter. I'll include all of your links. Again, tell us, is that the best place to find you? And is there any other, project or book that you want to stress?
Sure. That's the best. edwardcurtin.com is my website. The last book I wrote is called, what is it called?
Truth. I don't have the website with me.
See, I think it's, I write so much, I forget even the titles of my work. Seeking Truth in a Country of Lies. It's put out by Clarity Press. If you want to, I write on many different issues, whether it's poetry, film, war propaganda. I'm presently writing a few things like that. You have to have diverse interests. You can't just hammer people over the head with the same old story time after time. And that's a problem we have. The alternative media often has. We need to kind of jazz it up a little, change tune here and there, and show people that life is beautiful. And lastly, I would say on that score, I think one of the major issues, and maybe we could discuss it in the future on your program, is the spiritual dimension to existence, and how what I was terming the nihilists before, and their dark, evil enterprise is totally lacking in spirituality, and that is a very, very big issue to keep us all going, hoping, loving, having faith in other human beings. And so maybe sometime we could just talk about that. It's very important.
And we can do an episode in the future where it's just all positive, none of this war talk. And also, by the way, I think I follow Oliver Stone. I've interviewed his son, Sean Stone, and Oliver Stone's a big fan of your writing. He frequently tweets out your stuff, so that's pretty cool. Again, thank you, Ed, for joining me on Geopolitics and Empire.
Well, thank you, Lavoya. I always love talking to you. You do great work. Thanks so much.
I hope you enjoyed this Geopolitics and Empire podcast. The website is geopoliticsandempire.com, and I encourage you to sign up for the free email list that goes out with each podcast and every weekend with a collection of news headlines. The newsletter and website are our last lines of defense. We're being censored and deplatformed. It's nearly impossible to find Geopolitics and Empire on the Google search engine. We've been blacklisted. YouTube frequently takes down our videos with strikes. Facebook restricts our page. Reddit and Twitter take down posts. And after the Associated Press mentioned Geopolitics and Empire in a 2021 article co-written with NATO, our Patreon account was terminated. Vimeo also terminated our Pro account. The best free way to help Geopolitics and Empire is to leave a review on Apple Podcasts or elsewhere and subscribe to all of our media channels. You can find the video broadcast now on 5 platforms: Odyssey, Rockfin, Rumble, BitChute, and Brighteon. You can find the audio broadcast on the podcast ecosystem: SoundCloud, Apple, Spotify, and so on. My current favorite social media channels are Twitter and Telegram, but you can also find us on Gab, MeWe, Minds, Float, VK, Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Finally, Geopolitics and Empire is in dire need of funding to continue. You can leave a donation, purchase a consultation with the host, or become a member to receive additional benefits. We also produce a weekly broadcast called Dissident Thinker for members and Rockfin subscribers only. We will continue to fight the good fight come hell or high water. Thank you for listening.